Walk with me through the cellar door.
A storm is coming, Francis.
A portal to a more skeptical world.
Cellar Door Skeptics begins right now. Prepare for the revolution with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna.
Welcome, Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. It is my pleasure to bring episode 243. It's crazy. We've come so far and so long on this journey to podcast perfection, maybe? Probably not, because there's only two of us wearing a hat. There's a third guy that can't seem to wear his hat ever.
I'm wearing a hat today because today is a greasy hair day, and there's just no way around. I was out working in the rain, doing lawn work, being a dad. just dadding. It was like just raking leaves and being grumpy at the trees. I was just totally dadding out for a while.
So why don't you get a leaf blower then instead of getting grumpy? Oh, okay. So you weren't raking leaves. That's facetious. You were pretending to rake leaves.
No. You blow leaves until there's too much, and then you rake the leaves.
Because the leaf blower won't blow you don't know how. No, there's two things you can do. One, you can get a more high-powered leaf blower, or two, you blow the top. You blow the top of them. It blows them over, then you blow the bottom, and it blows them on top. So you're blowing top to bottom, then
or you
bottom
can make
to top.
Or you make a leaf burrito like I do. When you blow two sides, get a thing in the middle, and you rake them, and it takes like 2 minutes to rake a giant pile of leaves.
You come to my house, and you can rake a giant pile of leaves in 2 minutes. It won't happen. You've seen my yard.
Yeah. My backyard is like your yard. My front yard isn't. I did the front yard today, and I'm not doing the backyard anytime. I wait a little bit on that.
Yeah, well, my backyard, we have to rake them or blow them onto tarps and track them or put them in containers because they're just
blue tarp.
Too much.
Yeah, I have a blue tarp that I like pile and then drag the blue tarp. And then I get my lawnmower out and I totally Michigan redneck it. And I lawnmower these leaves into dust. Then I scoop them up and I put them in my compost pit. So that
then you grab the leaf blower and let the neighbors deal with it?
No, my neighbors do that to me. And I had like fencing it's like metal, 4 foot high. Just, I don't know, like it's not like real high end fencing, but it's metal. And they blow the leaves right through them. And you just come right through, but their ground is level with the brick. There's like brick on the bottom, and then there's fencing. And so, like, if I blow the leaves, it hits the brick and blows right back at me. But if they blow them on the dirt that they have because they're level, it blows into my yard. So, like,
because your neighborhood was gentrified.
It's just one of those things where I just like, do I want to fight with them about it? They don't do it too bad, but every once in a while I'll look out there like in the morning when I'm drinking my coffee, the kids are like spazzing, and I'll see my neighbor out there with his backpack steel, just like blowing leaves into my yard, and I'm just like, you know what?
Well, Mr. Powers, then why don't we just blow up the frickin' moon?
Yeah.
Just threaten to blow up the moon if they don't stop. I don't know. I've got a cat in my lap right now, so I'm feeling that I need to be saying something maniacal.
Yeah. I don't know. I was just dadding out and enjoying it. The rain came down, it quieted everybody out. It just turned on Lamb of God radio and just
yeah. Oh God, I gotta listen. I haven't listened to Lamb of God in a while.
Their new album is really nice. Their new album brings back some of the old feels. I've enjoyed most of it, but
well, that's kind of the important part, right? Actually, never mind. My coworker who works on the other side of our cubicle there, he doesn't understand volume with his headphones. That the reason he wears headphones is so other people don't hear his music. Now, you guys would like his taste in music. He's big into the same stuff that we are, heavy metal wise. But he'll just randomly like turn it on and crank it up, and I'll just be like, holy shit. And then a couple of weeks ago, I heard something, and I'm like, hang on. So I sent him a message over Skype because obviously he can't hear me because I can hear his music. He can't hear what I'm saying. And I was like, are you listening to Lay This to Rest? And he goes, yes. And I was like, can you turn it up?
Yeah.
Can you take out your headphones? Because I want to hear this too. Like, come on, man.
That riff used to be my phone ringtone for the longest time.
Nice.
Like the intro, just so yeah. But,
oh god, that right. I think my all-time
weekend is just kind of, doing the thing. So my wife had a bunch of photography appointments, and she did a mini session day today. So she was just doing her thing, and I was at home. The kids took a nap in the middle of the day, and I would dad out in the yard. And it's a nice weekend. I don't know. My peppers are. I don't know. It's gotten so cold that it slowed the color changes. So I'm hoping these 100+ seed pods that I have turn color and mature, so I can send you guys a little care package. But I have so much stuff just hanging off the plants and not changing color because it went from 75 to 49 in like 3 days. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I've decided when I remodel my house in the next, I don't know, 3 to 5 years, that when we tear that back porch off, we're gonna put like a small room, like a different type of living room. And I want to put the window that faces the sun. I want to put like a little where I can have my herbs, because like I bought a basil plant at the beginning of quarantine, right? Because I was like, all right, I'm gonna be sitting on my ass doing nothing. I might as well eat healthier. Yeah, and I like basil a lot. I use it in Thai food, and I use a ton of it. I make like a mozzarella and like bruschetta, but without bread. So like I'll eat, just give me raw cherry tomatoes, mozzarella balls, olive oil, a little bit of vinegar, some balsamic vinegar, salt, pepper, fresh garlic, and fresh basil.
Balsamic vinegar?
What did I say?
Balsamic?
Balsamic.
America.
It's called balsamic.
Balsamica.
Balsamic.
Basketball.
Anyway, moving on, because you can't seem to be mature enough to just not make fun of me. So I couldn't find basil. Usually they had this little container, and it's like $3, and you get a container with just leaves, which is really a ripoff if you think about it. But
it's terrible
for somebody like me who can't grow anything very well. It's great. And before I usually only use it during the summer, and it's like a once a week, twice a week type thing. Well, I couldn't find it, got pissed off, and went to Family Fair. They had a basil plant there for
in the
$4.
Little plastic bag in the dirt.
Yep, the little plastic bag. I was like, screw it. This is like $1 more than I normally pay. It's got 5 times that. I'm just gonna buy it and use it until it dies.
Yeah.
Well, folks, it is middle of October, and that thing's still alive somehow.
Yeah.
I do water it. Don't get me wrong, and you can see the brown leaves on it a little bit, and you can see the brown stems. And I finally moved it out of my kitchen, which gets only sunlight for a quarter of the day now, to my back porch, which it can get a little bit more sunlight. But then I decided, like, screw it. Like, wouldn't it be nice? And then I was like, man, if I just built an upstairs where like it was higher and it just was like the top of it. And then I'm sitting there thinking, maybe I should just build a grow room.
Yeah.
Like, just have all types of grows. But, then it makes me think about, but the wife and I wanted to put a garden in the back, and we want to put a raised garden bed, but I'm pretty lazy when it comes to doing construction work. But I think next summer, especially if this COVID is going to continue to go till next summer, and we're going to have no events or concerts or anything, I think I'm just going to bite the bullet. I'm going to rent the equipment we need to do it, and just somehow do it without having to do the physical labor and pay somebody to do the stuff I don't want to do. And
the
we're just going to put the garden beds in.
The absolute best thing you can do is you peel all the dirt off the top and the leaves and grass and all that, and lay down a blue tarp. Everybody's got a blue tarp. So they say to use black cellophane because you need to cook the dirt. You just basically need to do your sun and kill the dirt. And you can lay out one of those blue tarps and then lock it down tight and just roast the dirt in the sunlight. And about halfway through the summer, it would be completely and totally seed free and plant free. You just till it, and you can put in seedlings and stuff that from a grower or somebody, and you basically get where you would be at that point and finish out the season. Then you have like a garden, you have the dirt, you have everything you need, because it's so hard to start fresh soil and get it all going. unless you buy garden soil and you till in some organics and stuff. So like,
well, we're gonna build raised garden beds, so like
yeah,
if
so you'll
I
have
could
to
do
buy
that,
soil
but
then.
yeah, I'm gonna have to buy the soil, or I'm gonna have to dig it low enough that I have extra soil, which I might do. I have the wood; it's in my backyard on a couple of pallets, and I got it tarped over it, and it sat there for a year. And it's all heat treated because I got it from my work, and it was just kind of funny because we use the wood that we got is like wood that was securing these long pieces of slab that furniture companies use, and they're just like the tops of it, but they're like really good pieces of wood, and it was free. Our company just throws them away, and my buddy takes them and burns them, and then he took some of the good ones, well, because he doesn't like to throw things away. So his point is these can make good firewood, and they kind of do,
Yeah, but all that chemical or like pressurized wood it pops and goes nuts. I don't know.
Well, welcome to Cancer with Chris. I don't know what to tell you. We do that, but they had all these extra ones, so he's like, hey, you want these? You were complaining you need some stuff like this, so I took them, and they've been sitting in my backyard, and they didn't get ruined in a year, so I'm sure by next year they won't be ruined either, and I might as well just use them. I just got to figure out how to put them into the ground so they don't fall over. But that way, because I have like in my neighborhood, just so you know, like there's a difference between like I get the soil things, but if I leave things on the ground, I have more bunnies and squirrels that live in my garden area than you can even imagine. I mean, like literally on a daily basis, I can walk out of my house and there'll be a squirrel next to my car. They won't move until I get within like 5 feet of. Dead serious. They don't care. Same with the bunnies. The bunnies will just sit there and stare at you.
You'll have to fence in everything
until you move, and then they run wherever you're running because they don't understand how things work.
Yeah.
Well,
in building a garden,
you're right, but they only move until I get really close. Like if I walk out my door and they're sitting by my car 50 feet away, they don't care. If I get 10 feet though, they care that. Like until that, they don't care. They're just not scared of anything. We don't have enough stray cats around here, I guess.
Or 2 pit bulls. That's what I got.
Well, I have 1 pit bull, and he chases it, but only so much.
Well, you could always put in a sauna. I don't know if you've ever seen the animal saunas, the 5-gallon bucket with some sunflower seeds and a ramp. Yeah, so
does it kill them? If it kills them, I'm not in on it.
Well, that's what it is. Like it's that's the way to keep the chipmunks from eating holes in the side of my house and deciding to use the inside of my walls as a place to live. And so it's either that or hire an exterminator to kill them all in the area, or I have to just basically use traps. It's just either that or poison, and I'm not going to poison anything. So, but like they were chewing holes in the side of my house, and you can hear them running around in the walls. It's like, nope, we can't have that. We can't have permanent like major damage to my home. And so it's like getting animals, get a cat and getting dogs, they'll chase the critters away. But even then, like they don't completely go away. You'll have to fence in the full thing. I use that 48-inch chicken wire, and then use garden post around the raised bed, and you shouldn't have any trouble on that. But the herb stuff, what you've got with the basil or whatever, did your basil start flowering at all?
Yeah. Yeah, it did. Weirdly enough, right? It reflowered itself, and I was like I got new little plants inside of my little pot. Oh, it's cool for me.
So if you get rated, you'll see the 2 top flowers, and you'll see a bud start to form in the middle. If you twist that bud off and don't let it grow, because that bud is always growing in between 2 separate branches, and so if you twist that off, it'll actually make the plant grow out wider. And you'll get this really wide, bushy plant instead of a tall, leggy plant. And it'll have so many leaves, you'll never be able to eat them. I made pesto multiple times this year on just a little herb bucket, 6 inches by maybe 12 or 14 inches long. I mean, pesto. I mean, you need like a pound of basil to make pesto. It's nuts. So it's just a couple little things like that, but like little separate herb things. You don't even need anything fancy. That's one of the things I've been doing this year, because like what you said you're going to do next year is what I did this year. It's just me, the garden, the kids in the backyard, and it was really nice to have a series. I've still got tomatoes popping in. My peppers are all still changing color, but not as fast as I would like. The greenhouse is doing okay, which is just a little plastic greenhouse, but everything else is just kind of winding down. So I don't know. If you do it next year, dude. As much as you're like, oh, it's gonna suck if there's no shows, but I really found it enjoyable doing like the small surface area gardening. So like watch YouTube videos of like people who garden in restricted spaces, so you don't have to use as much land. And they'll show you how to do like an absolutely awesome amount of produce in a really small footprint, because nobody wants to be in charge of like a 70 by 80 garden with huge amounts of weed work all the time. So like there's some really cool techniques that are like very hands off, no-till gardening. It's awesome. So
Yeah, because that's what we're looking like. For me, the big thing is it is like tomatoes. I like tomatoes a lot. I like peppers.
Cherry tomatoes and a trellis, so they got something to lay on, and it's just red everywhere.
Yep. Because we had a garden before at the other house we were at, and like I couldn't get my broccoli to grow. My lettuce always got eaten, but I'll tell you what, my tomatoes and my peppers always did well.
Yeah.
I
don't think the animals like those as much, but I mean, I could.
They don't like peppers. My dogs don't eat the peppers, even the sweet peppers. If I accidentally drop it on the floor, they'll sniff it and walk away. You drop an onion, they sniff it, walk away. You drop a tomato, it's gone. It's like boom. It's like free food for them.
I had a
my
couple
dogs
of
love
peppers.
tomatoes.
I had a couple of pepper, like a couple of my super hots had like weird little chipmunk chew holes in them. I didn't go anywhere near that stuff anymore, which is awesome.
Anyway.
So yeah, good weekend, I guess.
Yeah. Well, speaking
I voted.
Huh?
It was awesome. I voted. I finally got to send in my ballot. It felt so nice.
Well, hopefully you didn't vote for Trump. So
no, but I tell you what, this whole town is like Biden signs everywhere. Oh, it's beautiful. Like, I can't believe it. I don't know what happened. It went from like all these early Trumpers, and there's Biden stuff everywhere. There's new ones that just have the Trump hair, like Nike swoosh symbol that is gold, and it just says nope.
I hazard a guess. Is that the people who originally supported Trump are the type of people who like agree with his "I only support winners" stance. So when they saw him get COVID, he looked like a weak leader, so they decided to flock to the next best thing. I don't know what animal does that. They see their leader being, the slightest bit weak, so they go to the next guy, whether they liked him previously or not. Now he's the next best thing.
I would bet you that most people are probably like, they still like his harsh America-centric policy. I think they're just sick and tired of the craziness. Like, he's just crazy. And they watched the Joe Biden town hall, and he's basically a nice Republican.
He is to the current Democrats what who was it? Was it Kasich was to the Republicans during that little presidential debate? Like, had it been Kasich running, like that definitely would not have turned out this bad.
Take away the weird paranoia around women. And not too different from that, and maybe some of the anti-abortion stuff from Mike Pence, but like in the end, like it's just like a government establishment thing. But I don't know. It's been nice to see that Ohio hasn't been as wild lately. I mean, there are some roads where there's nothing but Biden, no Trumpies anywhere. It's really, really interesting. So I don't know. People keep saying Ohio's purple. I never believe it, but we'll see. So this is interesting. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and next week we might get into a little bit more of the polls. I kind of took a break this week a little bit from the Trump mania, honestly, and there will be some discussions of Trump, in one of our segments, but I've kind of moved away from a little bit of that today. To focus on some science and economics. And it's funny because there's this class I'm taking for work for a certification, right? And the first, 2 or 3, classes, it's not that it's bad material, but it's like the material itself is nothing I haven't heard. It does help with self-growth and management and things and leadership, but it's not like anything revolutionary. Then this week on Saturday, I had this class, and I'll tell you what, the professor, because we get a different professor for every class. And this professor is very boring, very dry, but he was a finance professor, all right? And he never done this before. But I'll tell you what, by the end, I'm the only one engaged. Like there's like 15 of us in the class, and only one of like I'm the only one asking questions. I'm like, hey, let me ask this question. Like, okay, tell me how this relates, and tell me how that relates, and like, oh, I have to do I need to. So you're telling me these are the formulas I can use to talk about time, cash flow, and so essentially, like we learned about how it's like cash is worth today $1, tomorrow based on interest rates and inflation and different things it's worth less, right? Technically speaking. So if your inflation and interest rate and all this other thing is like 1.2, by 4 years from now, your dollar is worth 92 cents, right?
Yeah.
And not that I didn't know that, but then it's like, so he was saying, so what companies do when they evaluate larger projects, if they're multi-year projects or different things like that, they don't actually look at this, like your cash value. And I sat there and said, well, that's like, I have to evaluate new client business that comes in and help cost it out. So what happens is sales reps come in, they present something, operations says, well, this is what we feel it takes. I put it all together, and then we have a conversation with the sales rep to say, what are you going to sell it for? And then the sales rep will go, well, I want to sell it at a 20% margin, right? Because it's better for their thing, 3-year deal. But if you think about it, if I sell it at a 20% margin, year 1, that's correct. If I don't raise rates or do anything different, by year 3, I'm not making 20% anymore at all, technically speaking. Even if my costs stay the same and all that, it's because my cash value of my dollar isn't worth as much. But no company, like at least our company, didn't take that. It doesn't. I don't do that calculation. So he gave us all these calculations and things. And yes, it was a grueling 8 hours of like finance. Like, but then I was like, I could take all these formulas and go figure out all my props. And then when I go through my value props for my clients, I could say, well, by the way, this is a 3-year deal. You selling at a 20% margin in 3 years is going to be 18% because of this, this, and this. So you need to build schedule increases for this client in there that equals out this amount. And I have the formulas to help you do. So that was my weekend.
One of the things you have to have there, though, is you have to have a solid model to make that predictive element. Like you're basically making a prediction on the level of inflation to decrease the dollar value. Or if there's a case where you actually have negative inflation, so the retraction of an economy or anything like that, like there's all kinds of really cool stuff. So like whether or not your model is sufficient to in 3 years be accurate in its prediction is also another thing, because you can't predict catastrophic stuff. You couldn't the pandemic shutting down the global economy in certain sections, but effectively almost the entire thing except for the stupid places. So like there's all kinds of other barriers in there, but like if you use the assumption model, essentially, like when you're doing physics equations or whatever, if you're working on a scenario and any solution that you get, there's a set of assumptions that you have to make. Like I assume that gravity is consistent. I assume that this particular is energy isolated, and so that nothing's going to come in, nothing's going to leave, everything stays where it needs to stay. And so like with your model or whatever, your predictions for inflation for dollar value are accurate, like the more accurate the better, then you will, I mean, this is a huge leg up. If your model is not as accurate, then you could have a prediction that could actually make you'll spend more money because maybe you swung them in the wrong direction and dollar value was worth even less. Like, I don't know. This kind of stuff is really cool because it's like spreadsheety and I probably would have enjoyed that lecture. That stuff.
It was fun. Weird. Yeah. He gave us a spreadsheet. It had formulas in it. We got to do problem solving and,
bring it on. You're making my engineering hairs tingle in the back here. That's all.
It was weird.
That's what it's. It's fun. Anyway, like that kind of stuff.
So let's get down. I guess if you've stayed with us for 25 minutes.
Oh my god.
As we stick around. So today there's a couple of things I wanted to talk about. So we're gonna get into truth, decay, and our democracy in a little bit. But the first thing that I really wanted to address was the WNBA versus essentially the NBA. And I guess I'll share my screen. I guess I'll do that real quick. There was a post I did
today.
that's just like going crazy right now, I guess. And it seems very silly to me that it's that intensive, but it is. So
not too much.
All I did is post a meme about how this lady, Sue Bird, essentially has almost identical stats to LeBron James, right? The difference is that you'll see here is your salary and your bonus for winning. So before we get too far down this rabbit hole, right? Because we're going to go down this rabbit hole. I wanted to start with you guys giving your opinions, and then we can kind of go from there. Because what I see when I see this is I see an inequality of pay, first off. And we could talk about where all the money comes from, why they could pay more, why capitalism sucks. We could talk about all those things, but my big question, the first thing I see is huge inequality of pay. So we'll go ahead and start with Buddy here, and give us a little bit of your take on, in your opinion, what do you see when you see that meme?
When I see that, I mean, I'm not surprised for one. By the way, I found a hat just to make you happy, and I thought that it would be perfect because it's topical. So
it is. It's not all black though.
Well, no, but it's from the NBA. Anyways, so I actually, when I saw this in the notes, I was like, oh, I was just reading your conversation about this on Facebook. That was fun. And by fun, I mean, I really just wanted to gouge my eyes out because of a few people who were making really ignorant and just absolutely trollish comments that are just sitting there acting like it's okay that it's that way because it is that way, and trying to justify it that way. I mean, like, I'm gonna relay some personal information. My cousin she didn't work per se, but she did she was training to be on our bobsled team, our Olympic bobsled team. Now she didn't end up making it and has since stepped away because she's got other stuff she's doing with her life, like work and a baby now. And it just being involved in that, it was the amount of fundraising that she had to do because they did not get the funding that all the other sports teams get. And in Canada, we have we get the shaft a lot when it comes to sports, like professional sports, especially. Like our hockey teams haven't won a Stanley Cup since the 90s. Montreal Canadiens won that, and I think it was 94.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
It's not even your sport.
I know, and somehow Americans are better at it. I don't know what to say, man. Like,
I think it's because you guys fill your teams. You fill your rosters with Canadian players. That's why.
Yeah, it's like Wayne Gretzky was like.
So do we just pay better?
Probably.
Yeah. No, we take less of their money, their salary. Wayne Gretzky became an American citizen, so he wouldn't have to pay the massive amount of taxes he would have paid if he would have stayed a Canadian citizen.
Go figure. But anyways, so the amount of fundraising and the complete and total lack of income for it. But then you see other athletes who, for them, that it's their job. Actually, I've got another great example. You guys, I've kind of mentioned the CFL, Canadian Football League. Right.
Yes, you have.
Our top tier players barely make $100,000 a year. Most of our CFL football players have other jobs because they can't afford to live off of that salary. Now, granted, let's not misrepresent the fact that it's like 9 teams in the CFL trying to have enough players to keep interest, and the CFL does really well, at least in terms of in Canada. It's proportionately speaking, we've got more teams per people than in the NFL in the States, but you guys got like how many different football leagues a day, right? So there is that. So why is it that some athletes get treated better than others? So to those who are simply saying that there's more draw, it's not sexist. Okay, let's consider that. Let's just entertain that point for half a second. just half a second, and then we're going to get back to the fact that it's still sexist that players of the same caliber and skill who don't play an aggressive, shitty, showmanshipy game get paid less because they want to play a game, not because they, are clowns on the court. So removing gender from the equation, why can't those players have a living wage? Why can't Canadian football players have a living wage unless they end up getting drafted by the NFL, which happens a fair bit? So why is it that, the NBA players, MLB players, that's another one. Was it Beckham got $150 million by going to the LA Galaxy soccer club or whatever? Why is it that a very small few are allowed to have that kind of an income? Why, like maybe I'm just putting more of my idealistic spin on it, but why is that more okay than, even if they're, because they're in the millions, they're in that top bracket where, 80 cents of every dollar after that million point is put into into taxes that go towards, say, funding like other sports teams, other sports ventures. So like Olympic teams that you've got other athletes that could use that kind of attention, athletes that, may represent your country one day. Why would you not? I mean, the WNBA, it may not have the same attentions or the same draw that the NBA does. But again, I'm going back to my point of, it's not so much about the showmanship with the WNBA. It is about the players getting out there and showing that they've got what it takes to be on the court without all the tricks, without all the gimmicks, without fighting with the refs, without throwing tantrums. So it's at the end of the day, it's not an okay thing. And to sit there and say, well, this is just more marketable. Well, are you sure about that? Because were they both given the same amount of attention, or was one given more attention because of social gender norms? For, because women weren't allowed to watch the Greek Olympics because the men were nude when they were, what's the term, performing? Is it performing? I don't know. They're athleticizing, whatever.
Yeah.
So I think that it boils down to, we live in a society that cares more about the entertainment value than actual value. We want more of the sizzle and less of the steak, in spite of the fact that somehow we all think that we're so full of substance and we're all real and real this and real that, but we won't look at the reality. So I think it's because we're a culture of dishonesty, deception, and misdirection, to summarize it into a sentence.
All right, Hanna.
I'm way more simple in this situation. It's whether or not it's an entertainment situation. So Jeremiah Bannister had a big thing on there. I honestly really couldn't understand the weird run-on sentence that he had, but some of the other people that have been commenting is the gender difference, like sexual differences in speed and proportion and stuff like that. There's that argument saying that the men are bigger, faster, more entertaining, more dominant. Well, I actually would argue that watching the women play is way more strategic and oftentimes way more fundamental and can be more entertaining if you understand the basics of the game, as opposed to wanting to see some major, amazing feat of physicality. It can be a more strategic and intelligent game when the women play some of these games, because they have to use other tools than some of the men do, because it's not a gladiatorial fight. But anyways, it's basically, for me, it's the financial situation is our society itself has been watching these things in this form for so long. There's always resistance to change, and they were designed by a patriarchal society. This is just how our society has always been made. And so it doesn't surprise me that this is how it is. I mean, it's kind of, these are the symptoms of this, this disease that we've created in an unequal society. So it doesn't surprise me that LeBron James is paid a ton more money. I would love to see it be way closer, and I would love to see women have more. There would be basically more women interested in sports and athletics, but also I think it would be better for our society if men were less interested in these sports. As a person who has played professional sports in my lifetime for a single season, but I dedicated everything to my life up to about 24 years old. Everything was about baseball. And after that, like realizing all these other important things. I don't watch baseball as much. It's not that big of a deal to me. I mean, I do follow it, but like I wish more people saw sports as a periphery as opposed to like a major life identifying thing. And if that was the case, we might reduce some of this crazy amount of money men get in men's sports and the current NBA and NFL and MLB and all of the men's sports. They should technically make less money because it's sports ball. It's not as important as everybody makes it to be.
Sports ball.
And the women's leagues should have more women who are interested in those things, and so they both could have like an equalizing effect. I don't know if our society, anybody would be comfortable enough saying that there needs to be something a little bit more of a wage equality, because the size of the WNBA versus the size of the NBA financially is so vast that like I mean, unless you started over from scratch and gave them both even playing fields and then could watch them develop, then we could have an answer to this. But we can't do a perfect double blind study to see, so like I would love to see the women get paid more and the men get paid less. And I would love to see sports not be as big of a deal for men and be a little bit more of a deal for women. And for me personally, though, like I do think men's athletes are overpaid. And I do think that we should take that money and that kind of, I guess it's idolatry. Like people love and like idolize these people. I would love to see people idolize progressive thinkers and philosophers and discovery making scientists and stuff, but whatever, that's a whole different thing. But like this WNBA versus NBA stuff, it doesn't surprise me. I don't think we could ever perfectly equalize it, but I definitely don't think that this is like a good model for what we have is in any way a good thing.
No. And so my thing is, my stance is, and I could back this up by the way here, which we'll do a little bit later. But my stance is that the reason NBA is successful is specifically because of the amount of money poured into it, because of the commercial endorsements, the ability for them to sell their spots, right? And so what they do is if you pay somebody enough money, they don't complain about the other conditions for the most part. And for example, I'll use an example in a union setting. If you were to pay that union head 5 times what you pay every other worker, right? When it comes to the company going, well, hey, can you look the other way? We don't want to give them more than a 1% raise. You would see them do things against what the union is meant to do, right? And the idea that union manager's salary can never be 5 times what you make on the floor fixes that, because they don't give that bias. There's no capitalistic lean, no personal gain, none of this stuff. And while we could talk about, she still makes $215,000 a year, and I'll be honest, that's more than I make. So just saying, I don't know what the two of you make, but I sure as heck don't make $215,000.
I mean, close, but maybe after my next raid.
Good for you. I guess I need to go to Canada and do your job. Go work.
No, I barely make above minimum wage.
All right.
So the fact that people get paid a lot of money to chase a ball around a court,
so like, sports drives me nuts anyway, because I don't like to pay wages of any of that stuff. I think it's ridiculous because it's all based on this capitalistic intent. And so what happens is you have these machines making all this money, and they have to attract the top players to continue to make money. So you have to pay more and more, and your wage disparity just keeps going. But that doesn't remove the fact that we still have a wage disparity between men's and women's leagues. And so like some of the people on here are telling me, well, it's because the NBA has more money. They're more successful. There's more consumers. There was another person that says this is false equation, right? There's more tickets sold for this than that. And I get people's points in this, but that doesn't mean that that's fair or logical, right?
Well, the WNBA didn't start until 1996.
Yes, exactly.
You know what I mean? So like our society was like not even really cool or open to the idea of a women's professional basketball league until the mid 90s. So like to expect them to be like if you wanted to start your own league and whatever, it doesn't matter what it is. If you start now and there's a monopoly, like the one who gets all of it, and you have to create a competing thing, of course you're not going to be nearly as big. It's going to do everything it can to keep you in existence, but way over there. And that's what the NBA has basically done with women's basketball league. They haven't created this like partnership, like, oh, cool, here's the women's league. We should totally partner up and work out ways to make both of these really good. There's nothing like that. They're like, yeah, you exist. That's cool. Whatever. It's women's basketball.
And they're constantly struggling right now. Like they're constantly struggling. It's a thing because they don't want to invest. And like what they did is when they adopted them officially, so officially the league was like, all right, you guys own teams in the same city. Why can't they use the same courts? And B, why in God's green earth are not you funding them? And some of them shut down, which I didn't know about because I don't like basketball personally. I don't like basketball at all. So like my interest in this is with the wage gender gap disparity. And it's kind of funny because some of the people on here, I have somebody else saying, well, why should they have to fill a quota, right? Why should we do this? They're never going to make it in the same league. How do you put people together and mix them? It's just never going to happen, right? And they have to reference and be like a transphobe and have that conversation, which we're not going to get into tonight because it's just that. It's moving the goalposts. But then it's kind of like, well, we do want a perfect utopia, and fine, maybe we can't have that, right? Maybe we cannot have a perfect utopia. We can't have that. But why does the WNBA? And here's a good point. Why does the WNBA generate less money? Is it because there's less viewers? Is it because they're not getting the national primetime spot? And what I would challenge is to say is, what if we just did a role reversal, right? What if we just literally said, hey, here's what we're going to do. Guess what, NBA? You're going to take the summer. You're only going to play games the way the WNBA plays. And we're going to give the WNBA the premium spots, the premium times, all of that. All the advertising endorsement, everything for a full year. And if they cannot sit there and again, the reason I brought up what I learned on Saturday is to actually talk through the dollar time, gap value, right? It's to understand that because when we have these conversations that we keep having, we don't take some of this finance aspect into it. So if the WNBA was given the spot for 1 year and they generated, let's say instead of the 60 million, they generated 1.2 billion. Yes, not as much as the NBA would generate, but they generated more than they did before. We'd actually have to do a statistical analysis to understand what that wage gap is, or not what the wage gap, I'm sorry, what that, your value proof is, and then go look at your future value proof, right? And so you could sit there and do both these things. You can look at and put a percentage ratio difference, and you could say, what if I did this and continue to trend this out for the next couple of years, and then do the same thing the next year, and then the next year. And if you continue to see similar statistics or similar numbers, or if that first year it hits a plateau and slowly grows, then you can take that and count it as like compounding interest and go, well, the NBA has been around for this long. This is what their compounding interest has been based on all these years. Now we take the WNBA and say, well, their compounding interest is this for that amount of time period. And that's the idea here is, folks, and this is what pisses me off the fucking most when we have this conversation, is the fact that they aren't given that same equal chance. And I agree, this is fair. They only generate X amount of dollars. I don't disagree. The problem I have, though, is that we haven't given the opportunity or created the investment because either A, we don't fucking believe that it will generate that. B, we're sexist and we continue to be. C, capitalism benefits chauvinistic thinking. Or D, maybe we live in the Twilight Zone and this is just a utopia for men. I don't know.
As a pacifist, maybe we need a world war so that we have the women's league as the only option again. I don't know. There's no crying in baseball, right? Remember? Think about it, right? Take away the NBA completely and totally right. Give people nothing
Oh,
but
come
the
on. Like they
option to watch women's sports, women's baseball, women's football, women's basketball. At the end of a year, maybe two, the people watching, they understand the game, they see the differences, they study the subtlety. Vegas starts putting the odds on lines. Everybody's paying attention to the game. They learn the players' names, they create an emotional connection with these teams. Does that change this so that the women would get the same kind of attention? I don't know. And I would love to be able to say, turn the internet off and we're all going to forget about the NBA for a couple years.
to your point about the whole World War thing. Gary Bettman is a weasel who made it so that his precious hockey players, his little cash cows, can't be used in the Olympics. So I'm pretty sure that with that kind of financial backing, they would find every loophole that would make bone spurs seem like an actual valid reason to get out of going to the war that the poor people aren't allowed to get out of.
Mine was totally a hypothetical, but like if you think about the women's leagues in baseball, like by the time the women's leagues were essentially at full steam and the men's leagues didn't exist anymore because of the war, the national pastime had been women's baseball. People were watching it. People paid attention to it. It was on television. It was a big deal. There's a reason why, there's a lot of memories of that time. And I would love to see that if there was no male option. I honestly do think that the women's leagues are just as intriguing, just as interesting, and just as amazing as the men's leagues would be in different ways, from physicality to whatever. But like, I really do think they are just as good. They may be a little different, but I do think they would be just as good and just as interesting. And but I don't think there'll ever be a case where we actually could see, a natural organic growth to see what society would look like if that was the option. Like if there was never the male option, because there was never the female option. That's why it's an established thing. You can't change these behemoths. And like, it would be really cool to see that. And like, maybe we can do a Walden 3 with sports ball.
It's just so frustrating, and to the point of I think it's a matter of capitalism was built on a sexist society, so that's why capitalism seems sexist, because inherently things like economic systems aren't this or that. It's just a matter of what elements of your society do they enable. Well, the whole let the market decide enabled sexism and overall shitty people to come out on top because they didn't have the empathy, or they just didn't care about who they stepped on and went out of their way to try to exploit. And they to those who are willing to exploit the most go the most spoils, right? It's
all the rules to global capitalistic endeavors, even though they may seem more progressive now, were created by men
who wanted
mid 50s. I mean, we're looking at the
older
UN
white men
restructurals.
Who didn't want to actually give back or put anything back into their community. They just wanted to hoard the wealth. And I mean, that's an episode of Hoarders that we need, is a billionaire, but that'll never happen because
a lot of times I think it's subconscious. It's subconscious as well, though. Like, people don't like. There are some people who intentionally do it, but like a lot of this is just like that's the structure that our society has taken, and a weird side effect, it has created sports that are incredibly unequal. I mean, I don't know. It's a sad thing, and I would love to see something get better. But I mean, I definitely don't know if this would be an area where I would like to see any kind of global or at least national wage structuring. Like, maybe if you were a professional athlete in the United States, your base salary and across all platforms is X for all professional. You know what I mean? Like, be a graduate student, you get X amount of dollars. That's your salary. And then that's, the base. If there was something like that for professional sports in the United States, and then the team could do a subsidiary salary and your sponsors and stuff like that, like, so that extra things, but there's like a minimum wage for sports based on, X whatever formula. There's all kinds of things. I don't know if that would be a thing that would be ever applicable if there was, you know what I mean? Like, if there was some kind of like wage balancing that was forced on these leagues by the government. I don't know if that would be if that could ever really be a success, or if that would just cause too much trouble. Because you know what I mean? Like you hear socialists and that idea of like, no, whatever the difference is between the men and the women, we have to balance it out perfectly even. Like that would drive all kinds of weird economic side effects. If you try to do that in a capitalistic system, it would drive some teams to bankruptcy, and it would give some teams who have no money just an insane amount of money. And like it would take a while to balance it out and see what happened there. I would have to talk to an economics expert to know, like, if you put caps and stuff like that on.
The problem with that would also be trying to figure out how to make sure that the money doesn't, do what it always does, which is float its way to the top and stay there. So that would be another thing to contend with, is just because, like, the one thing that I remember in learning about the ancient time or older times of sports is like the early days of even the NHL, the players made peanuts. It was the owners who were making all the money, right? And obviously we don't want a system like that. It's taken a long time for the players to be able to get paid for being the ones making the money, doing the work, because let's face it, there's no such thing as an ethical billionaire. There isn't. Period. The only way you get there is by exploiting people and using loopholes, but that's another conversation. And so it's great to see that money coming back to the players, but now the problem is there's too much money stuck at that level, and not enough being redistributed and being put towards helping other people maybe get to that opportunity. I mean, I might laugh about the fact that when I found out how much baseball players made, I immediately called my dad and screamed at him for not putting me in baseball as a kid, and telling him that if he got into a shitty old folks home, that was why. But that's just kind of proof that there is such a huge wealth inequality that exists there. And don't get me wrong, like, yeah, okay, to be an athlete, I'm not going to take away the amount of work that goes in there, because there's so much work that goes into being like a full-time athlete, the training, the rigorous training, and maintaining, your body and your performance and keeping yourself healthy. That's a pretty difficult task. And so I think that, that is worthwhile of some compensation. But then again, I also think work in general is worth compensation. And to see people who, throw around a ball making more than somebody who saves lives, i.e. a doctor, that to me is problematic. And that's where the whole people who argue against the raising of the minimum wage tend to lose my interest in acknowledging their existence, is because they'll get upset about, somebody who's a burger flipper making the same as a paramedic. Well, I'm sorry. Why is the paramedic not making more then? You're upset about somebody making a living wage off of working full time, but trying to compare that to somebody who saves lives, who makes that little. Why do you think that's more okay, right? And simply saying, well, that's just the way the system is, and that's okay because it's okay. That's just avoiding the conversation and simply saying that you don't care. And if that's the case, just admit it.
I get your point, but I think we're moving that topic too far. Like, I get the point that everybody's overpaid, blah blah blah. Sports are ridiculous. We should just move on. But the problem is we actually have to address the actual problem, because just so you and I have this conversation, it'll never change. These people are not going to stop making millions of dollars until we defund them. And I'm not saying we shouldn't do that, but that's not the topic of today's conversation, and we've kind of tracked
I guess we've
too
deviated
far from that. So
we have a tendency to do.
So, coming back to the problem, this article talks about what actually is happening, right? So they believe that the problem is not as much a lack of interest from men, though I have an article, and we could talk about that, but probably not, where it's actually men have a problem with women's sports. And I'm just going to say it's a fact, and Jeremiah and Chris, go fuck yourself. I guarantee you that neither one of you would support women's sports in the same way you do men's. So anybody on that Facebook thread, I challenge you, come on my damn show and we'll have that conversation, because I guarantee neither one of you, none of them that are opposing this increase in women's wages would actually truly want to watch these sports. And I guarantee you the article that I could show you would demonstrate all that. But we're not going to go into that tonight, but the article link is in the description if you want to deal with it. Yep. So, they talk about why men aren't watching, like I just said. But the bigger thing is, why don't women care, right? But here's the thing. Women make up 75% of the people watching women's NBA.
Oh yeah, I would expect that entirely.
Yeah. So think about it. Half the population of the United States is made up of women, and 75% of the viewership are women. If every woman in the country actually did tune into the WNBA, it could stand on its own 2 feet. Now, I will recognize that this article is blaming the victim a little bit, and I won't say that it's not, because this article feels very much like it is blaming the victim. But we have to
telling women, why don't you support the league? If you want it to be big, you should be supporting it. Basically, what they're saying.
It's not. No, not exactly. No, but they're talking about, why, some of the different things that kind of go into this, because it says here, even females who are actually interested in the sport balk at the WNBA, including professional sports writers, right? And so it's not as much that the women are not supporting it. It's the fact that they don't see the money in it. People are buying into this. Where does the money flow? And I'll give an example, and I'm going to be, I guess, a little cocky here because I'm giving an example. For example, I'm working on a campaign with an individual that I support very heavily. I'm investing money in this person, right? If I wanted to invest money, I would just walk over to Bill Huizenga or, his opponent, Bradley, and just be like, all right, how do I help you win? Because they're already on the winning side. So the problem is people are not picking the underdog on this opportunity for the same reason that people in that thread were bitching about it, right? And so it's not the fact that more women are not supporting it. It's the fact that those that are not taking the stance, and we're not allowing them and giving them the platform to influence it differently. And because part of the problem is there's no money to do that. And because money is what's driving everything, such as what you guys were talking about earlier, even though it was a little off track, you're talking about how money wins money, right? And when you have enough money that you can pour into something, I mean, look at Trump. He's failing. He starts pouring a bunch of money he doesn't really have, but pours it into it, raises the money. All of a sudden, he gets a kickback, and now he's making all sorts of money, not paying taxes and all these other crazy things. It's the same idea. When you have money, you can do this. So
also, if you're also in charge of all of the infrastructure, right? So the NBA, the male version of this sport, created all of the infrastructure for viewing. It's like, imagine if there's a third party in our government and they wanted to be in the presidential debates. Oh, wait, the Republicans and the Democrats have a commission and they're in charge of all of the debates on TV. Where's the channel for the third party? It doesn't exist. It's the same situation. It's the NBA is in charge of all of the infrastructure. So why would they give up their money-making roots and their control and infrastructure they build to help the women, unless they were trying to keep them where they are? Like, there's a glass ceiling for the WNBA that the NBA has put there, and they keep it there intentionally as best they can, unless enough people came out and said, listen, NBA, you got to stop this. But that, I think that's kind of a part of the gist on this, is that not enough people have said to the NBA, no, you guys need to get involved or change something. Because like, in order for this to change, the existing corporations, the NBA and NFL, anybody that's doing anything like this has to make they have to make the change, and they have to support the up and coming thing on the female side, because it's a monopoly otherwise.
I found just a point that was made in the article, and I know you were saying about it blaming the victim. I just want to read this paragraph here. All right, let's see. Trying to attract men who already have preconceived notions about the WNBA or female athletes in general is fruitless. These are the guys who make fun of WNBA players and then kiss their daughters goodnight and tell them they can be anything they want to when they grow up. They will never be fans. So I really liked that point, just because for me, it brought up something regarding the gendered notion behind it that I thought was kind of important. There is, women, them sitting there saying that while women are 75% of the viewership for the WNBA, we need more women to watch. Well, it also needs to be remembered that, like, we're still very regressive, culturally speaking, when it comes to gender roles. Like, women aren't allowed to be interested in sports, and when they are, they have to do the male sports because that's the most interesting. That's, they have to be bloodthirsty, and they can't just be an athlete who wants to perform at the top of her game. They have to go for blood. They have to kill. They have to win.
Well, just think of the
female
female journalists or like sportscasters or whatever. Like people lose their mind the first time there was a female on-field reporter for the NFL. Like it was like people yelling, like she can't know anything about the sport. Really? Okay.
Exactly.
So, like, it does exist.
Hanna, as somebody who was heavily involved in sports, you know full well the way women who are interested in sports are expected to behave. Because there are those social rules that make that up. Sports are to me, like I almost see the modern sports, high level sports, as kind of like our, hold back to, like the gladiator days and, where we would have, blood sports and all of that. And that was tributes to the gods and everything.
A reptilian brain instinctual thing. It's very primal. I think that's part of the draw.
And it's not allowed to grow and become, about the skill and the quality. It's about the bloodshed, about the victory, about the win. We got to get the W,
things
boys.
We typically associate with male.
And that's how males are socialized. So I'm not surprised. And I do agree. It's kind of, it glosses over that point. I mean, it touches on it and then it just kind of walks away from it. So yeah, I do stand with you in thinking that this article kind of blames the victim instead of acknowledging the fact that the victim has been set up and has been conditioned to behave a specific way. And, with gender roles, women are not allowed to be interested in sports unless they are, a tomboy and bloodthirsty and, love beer and nachos and, can't stand those skinny bitches and are not like other girls. It's, there's a whole subculture behind it that we could probably talk about later on down the line.
But we're not going to. That's not part of that.
No, that's why I'm setting it aside. So I think that there is a large portion of this is built on the fact that society, before we really started having these major sporting events, was so sexist, so misogynistic, and women can't do anything but raise children and cook food and take care of the home. Men are the ones who go out. They get the kill, they get the W, they bring home the bacon. It's disheartening because as a society we have so much capacity to grow, and yet we're not. We're sitting here saying, no, it's more important that we just accept things as they are, and people need to stop trying to change things.
Exactly. And that's the thing. And this is where I come in and say, okay, well, is there other examples of how this has worked?
I was going to bring this up.
Oh, here you go. Look, Norway agrees to pay men and female international footballers equally. Right now, okay, this is not basketball, and it's not your standard American football BS. There's not a bunch of people in sweaty suits, hitting each other for,
I will argue globally, football rivals any American league.
I will 100% agree with you. And you can ask my kids. I used to drive them nuts when I had cable, and I got sick of watching American football. I would put soccer on.
Yeah, I call it globally soccer, but like it's like the rest of the world football pales a lot of American sports. It's insane.
Even I fell asleep for all sports. I always fall asleep. Hockey's really the only sport that I can say has kept my interest ever. I like hockey a lot, and hockey is actually very similar to soccer. But again, let's not go down that side tangent because it's just gonna be this whole other thing. So the question becomes how do we...
Is that their like national teams, or is this like all? Because that's the question is like, are there a whole bunch of teams in Norway that are going to be affected by this, or is just like their two top Norway representing teams? So like the women's Norway team, the men's Norway team, or is this like local teams everywhere in that article? You know what I mean? So like in America, it's a whole bunch of different teams and the players and whatever, but like, are these representative of the state and then paid?
I don't have the answer to that, so I'm not going to answer that.
That might be easier because like Norway is like a smaller space.
Okay, but again, it's inconsequential though. Here's my point. I get your point, dude, but that's inconsequential because the difference is how they pay people and what they're demanding. And fuck it, if we have to create a law that says that, then that's what we do. And this is where capitalism fails. This is why capitalism is a failure to our society. But they've agreed that this association, their international players are going to get paid very similarly, right?
Yeah.
So they agreed to this. So here's a great article that explains that whole thing. And yes, was there pushback? Sure. It's not going to not be, pushback. But here's the deal.
Norway.
Oh, look.
They're cool.
Can it actually be done? Oh, it's been done. Oh my God. I hit the. There we go. Good. I don't want to register for anything. I don't want any more emails. But they're getting paid the same as the men's side, right? And so the idea is that this is a long time coming, but this can happen. So we could sit here all day long and negotiate and talk about and discuss this. But look, it's already fucking happening. So you sit here and tell me why we shouldn't start practicing this in the United States and why we haven't to this day. Because to me, it signifies for one reason, maybe two. The first main reason is because of capitalism and money. And the second main reason is because capitalism is sexist at its core. You can pick whichever one you want, folks. I don't care. But both those are two fucking valid reasons why we're at where we're at.
Well, what if we did it on a scale model, right? So like WNBA, NBA, a lot of states have both teams. So if you have, I mean, it'd be really easy to say the Detroit Pistons and the Detroit Shock are male and female, WNBA, NBA. If you said, okay, you are a Michigan professional sports basketball player, you are guaranteed X. This is your minimum salary. This supersedes whatever union deals, whatever. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and so like Norway is potentially the size of a state in the United States, sometimes a little bigger, sometimes a little smaller, depending on if you're Midwestern or whatever. But like the state itself, a smaller scale could essentially approve something like this and create a scenario, a proof of concept economically. Because obviously the largest economic machine in the world is not going to be a thing that's going to be okay with doing this. So like a smaller scale. So let's say Norway did it. Maybe some other Scandinavian countries are able to do these kinds of things because one, they're a more homogenous society. It's easier for them to make these kinds of decisions. There'll be some pushback, but it's usually not as intense and crazy as it is in a culture as diverse as ours. And so let's say Michigan did it. The Detroit Shock and the Detroit Pistons, there's a minimum for, in equal pay for the male and female in basketball. We could see what happens if it destroys both teams, whatever. Okay, cool. We'll start over again, I guess. It's not like they're going to, you know what I mean? Like, it's not like there's ever going to be a vacuum. Like the Detroit Pistons just melted down and were garbage forever. And then the Detroit Shock were just so overpaid that they destroyed the league and it like affected the balance or whatever. Like that wouldn't be something that I would be like, okay, this is proof that we can't do this. Why we should never do this. You know what I mean? It's like the idea of all of these people saying that like, we can't have socialized medicine because it'll be this horrible slippery slope. It'll destroy everything. We'll all die in deathbeds with death panels and whatever. Like, okay, cool, fine. One president, 4 years. We'll see what happens. If it just everything starts on fire, kind of like it has in the last 4 years. If everything starts on fire, then we'll it's really easy to go back. I mean, we can always go back. Right? It's there. It's like if you want to try marijuana instead of opiates. Well, the opiates aren't going anywhere. They'll always be there. So let's legalize marijuana and see if that helps. If it doesn't, we made a mistake. We're going to go back. Like it's people that are unable to make changes and make decisions and be malleable and try new things. This is a great example of that. Like you can't pay women as much as men. Like, of course you can. You can do it. It's not that big of a deal. Do it. And if it's horrible and it ruins all the things you love, then change it back. I don't think it will. I think it'll be great. I think having a women's league that's as strong as a men's league would be awesome because I don't watch either of them. Like, cool. I mean, if I was a person who was consuming those products, I would also be interested in having more choices. Wouldn't you? I don't know. I don't see how doing something like this would be bad or good. In the end, it's going to be something new, and if it works out, cool. If it doesn't, but like allowing an NBA to have like a monopoly on basketball and just completely destroy anything, including the gender, like not so much opposition, but like the other gendered. It just seems like it's unfair, and it could be changed, and it would be awesome if it did, and I would love to see society be less resistant to change, because I think they're making a mistake. I think this would be another wonderful thing that would make our society better and more enjoyable, to have two awesome leagues of men and women, very different in the way they play, but equally entertaining.
Yep, fair enough. So as we move on to the next segment, we kind of come back to our answering conservative questions. So we elicit, if you would like to submit a question that you want a liberal to answer. Yeah, you bring the tears, Mr. Bannister.
Liberal tears, huh?
Yep. Yeah, you can drink them in your coffee every morning. Anyway, so if you're listening to the show and you're a conservative and you want to submit a question, send us an email or messages on Facebook. That's how we get it the best.
We won't name you.
We haven't since then.
So this week, or anything like that. We just want to have a good faith conversation and answer the questions in, the proper amount of time that they deserve.
We promise we won't play Mark Hamill's laugh for the Joker in the background while we're answering.
We will definitely not do that, because I don't need a strike on YouTube. So this week's question came to us, and it says, "Why is it racist to call COVID the China virus? The China, who can do this better than Chris? The China virus.
China virus."
There you go. I'm not even good at impersonating Trump anymore, I guess.
Yeah.
You know what? It takes a lot of brain damage.
All right. So 3 minutes.
Gauge.
3 minutes each. You all get 3 minutes. That's it. Buddy, you're up first.
Roll. All right. Timer's on. So, why is it racist? Probably for the same reason it's racist to look back and think of calling it the Spanish flu is racist, especially because there's actually no reason to believe that it was in Spanish. In fact, the first case was confirmed in the United States. So why are we not calling it the American flu? If you have to call it the China virus, I'm going to call it the flu of 1918, the American virus. Period. You don't get to rewrite the rules simply in your favor. You don't get to change them just because you don't like the fact that you're not winning enough. I know that one of the biggest problems that I've experienced with a lot of people who lean to the right is the fact that it's about winning no matter what, no matter whether you're right or wrong, it's just about the win. But to sit there and say, it's the Chinese virus, well, that creates a very negative image of Chinese people. I mean, as it is, a friend of mine whose boyfriend is Vietnamese was chased down the street by ignorant people who are sitting there blaming him for the virus. And he's Vietnamese, not even Chinese. It's not about being honest about where the virus came from. It's not. Calling it the China virus is simply a way of trying to encourage people to gather pitchforks and torches and chase the monster through the village, even if there isn't actually a monster and the monster is really just a misunderstood person who wants a hug. But to sit there and act like that's not racist is just foolhardy, because all you're doing is just rallying cry and demonizing and people who are from a country without actually having more of the facts. Sure, the virus may have originated in China. It's racist to call it the China virus. It is not racist to say it is a virus that originated in China. To sit there and slap that label on is to create a negative stereotype, is to give credence to discriminatory practices against people of a particular cultural background, whether or not they're from that background in all actuality, just because they happen to share a geographical region or similar physical features such as the color of their skin or the shape of your eyes. It's not racist to say it came from somewhere, but it is racist to say that it belongs to China, because it doesn't just affect China. It doesn't affect people who are of Chinese descent. It's quite clear that it's affecting everyone. In fact, there are over 200,000 dead Americans who I'm sure would agree that it doesn't just affect people of a certain ethnic background. And I don't know if that's my 3 minutes or if I've exceeded, but that's pretty much all. Oh, well, there we go.
Well, I mean, one of the first things that I wanted to check is what was the first case of the bird flu? 1997 in Hong Kong. I don't remember hearing anything about any particular group of people responsible for that. There were mistakes made. We're not
By
entirely
both
certain.
sides? Are they both good people?
Yeah, there were mistakes
I will
made for
cut you.
people who were trying to keep this under control and trying to do the right thing. Um, it's an issue. It's a problem, but I don't remember anybody particularly calling one group of people the group of people who are responsible for it. Same with the 2009 swine flu. If you look around, the first American cases were in Southern California and Texas, but they did happen outside of that area. There's a lot of worries about, the Central Americas being the driving force that brought that flu to the United States. But in the end, this is not a specific thing that you can allocate directly to any one group of people. Yes, the Chinese, the country itself, is so worried about information that it tried to completely and totally encapsulate this. They made as far as mistakes are concerned, they made way more than they should have, and they are entirely very responsible for the delay in the world's understanding of what was really happening and how bad it got early on. But they cannot entirely, unless there's some way we can prove that they genetically developed this thing and this is the Chinese government's virus or whatever. This is a natural evolutionary thing that happened, and you can't particularly throw it to any one place. This is going to be something that happens by probability and random happenstance and evolutionary traits. Anywhere in the world, it could have come from anywhere, and it just happened to come from that one place. And the reason we call this the China virus, or at least some people call this the China virus, is because they're looking to make political points, and they're starting from a racist standpoint, an isolationist standpoint, an anti everybody else, isolationist, America only standpoint. Otherwise, these motives and these arguments would have been used in other places. And so calling it a China virus is racist because the basis and the reason why you're saying something like this is based on, essentially not liking this region and looking for a reason to call it bad and looking for a reason to call those people bad. And so I do think that it is a racist thing to call this that, as opposed to calling it what it is, which is another version of a coronavirus or another version of the SARS-CoV-2 virus.
Exactly. So when we talk about it, right, and we talk about these different things, the first thing that comes up is the xenophobia thing, right? Mm-hmm. That's the first thing that they talk about, and when we think about it, and when we categorize things with a country, what we're doing is creating a fear, and we're fear mongering towards that specific, area, region, or country, right? So when we say the China virus, you're not saying it started by the China government, right? Because you could say that because the China government is not China all inclusive. The China government isn't the complete dictocracy of America. Just the same way as when people, because it would be the same way as if, over in Saudi Arabia, they're like the American war. And you're like, what are you talking about? It's not the American war. It's like, yeah, you came over here and killed a bunch of people. It's the American war. Well, I had nothing to do that. I didn't vote for the person that came over and killed you either, right? But if they were saying that, that would be creating a atmosphere of fear towards the American public versus calling out what it is. So if they said the American government came over and did this, and then you would go over there and they'd be like, well, are you part of the American government? Well, no, I'm not. I'm just this guy that wants to hang out in your area because you have good food, and cool culture. And that's the idea here, is that we have to be very careful, because when you proliferate this and you use that terminology, people get bullied for it because of xenophobia. That's what it is. It creates unnecessary xenophobia for people, right?
They use it. They're using xenophobia as a basis, and this is just another way that they can reinforce those beliefs, confirm their negative beliefs towards X group of people.
Yes. And the truth is, you can name viruses after the region if you wanted. That can happen. But the problem is the reason that the World Health Organization doesn't do that is because it creates xenophobia of that area, of those people, of what's happening. They get that. So when we say the China virus and the president sits here and is like, oh, yeah, exactly. A lot of people feel that he's giving permission to blame the virus on Asian people. And when you have that in your society, and this is where, like, this is sad because, like, people like Andrew Yang, people who ran for office, are people that have been picked on because of this. And he had nothing to do with it. When's the last time he was actually living in China? Did he have anything to do with it? And so the idea is, even if it came from that region, unless you can demonstrate that somebody created this massive, crazy virus to kill people, you can't turn around and relate it to that area. And even if you can prove this, right? Even if you can prove that the Chinese government did this and did all those things, it doesn't represent their totalitarian populace. That's not the right word, but their total populace of everything.
Yeah.
And
the
if
government,
you can't,
the Chinese government doesn't represent the people, do they?
no, but
Yeah.
neither does the American government, it seems like. So that's my whole point, though, is you can't represent the totalis of people. There's your word for the weak boy, buddy.
Totalis.
Yep, totalis. I'm waiting for, I hope on Christmas, that's what I get, is like a bunch of video clips of me saying stupid words. I will play it.
It feels
100% okay.
It feels like you're summoning in like
I'm summoning
you know
a Patronus.
I mean?
It's a Patronus.
It feels like you're summoning like an atheist version of like a fantasy novel of like this is the summoned creature from monster hunting that the whatever ex non-believe community. I don't know. It's just like, but
yeah. I get it. I get your point, and I understand
but,
it. But
yeah,
but going back to it is the idea here is we could talk through this for hours and hours and end, but it doesn't mean anything because of the fact that you can't relate one issue to a populace of people unless the total populace of people like claim that is true. And then we can have a conversation about it even when they do that. But because it creates xenophobia and fear and racism, that's what happened. So there's your answer to the conservative question of the week.
Yay!
Now, I think that actually deals a little bit with our next segment, for the evening. And this segment is it's weird because it came from a finance channel that I follow a little bit. Not a lot, but a little bit. And that's, the thing with this is we talk about what is decaying in America, right? What decays America? There's a lot of things that decay America, but what truly is decaying America? And there was this article that came out that we won't play the video for you, but essentially, is America experiencing truth decay at an alarming rate? And so the first thing is you got to talk about what truly is truth decay.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this corporation called the Rand Corporation. And I don't know, have you heard of the Rand Corporation before? Because let me tell you, you have. I have not, except for there is, if you watch the Fist, which is a Marvel show that's on Netflix, the Iron Fist. Yep. If you watch that, they have the Rand Corporation.
Oh, right, Danny Rand.
Yeah, and so like the first time I heard about this, I was like, "Holy shit! Is there really a Rand Corporation?" I gotta like Google to see if Danny Rand works for this corporation or if his sister does, because I need to know if the Iron Fist exists. It doesn't, unfortunately. Because I like superheroes that exist, but
the Rand Corporation is pretty cool. It's an American nonprofit. They've been around for a while. I think it's the 1950s, late 1940s. Yeah, you hear about them all the time. They're cited as a source often on NPR, so they're relatively interesting and reliable because they've been around for a while.
Yeah, Exactly. And so we'll get into the Rand Corporation in a minute, but essentially truth decay is defined as the diminishing role of facts and analysis in public life, such as meme culture, right? Meme culture is that. And you know, it's funny because I've made fun of Jeremiah Bannister on this cast, and I hope to God he listens to this since he's commenting, because I'm going to tag him later in this the thing. And I'm calling him out specifically because I agree with him actually on meme culture, right? Like I do agree meme culture is kind of a cancer on our society. It helps us stop thinking deeply about something and taking just one minuscule viewpoint. But on the opposite side, meme culture also stimulates conversations and allows for us to have more in-depth conversations about things than we would before. But hence, this led me to this article, leading me down another path to look who the Rand Corporation is, all these other things. Again, very sad Danny Rand does not work there. But
yeah,
when we talk about the decay of truth, the decay of everything, Dr. Jennifer Kavanaugh, who is not related to
Brett
Kavanaugh.
Thank God. Thank goodness.
Good, because he probably would have done weird things to her while she was sleeping.
Oh my God. All right, moving on. Explained that there's 3 particular scientific trends that characterize truth decay. The first one is disagreement about objective facts and data in places where we have clear data, clear evidence, and people continue to reject it or say the opposite is true in the case. An example would be the debate over the safety of vaccines. We have a case where we have an overwhelming body of evidence showing that they are safe, but an increasing number of people that claim they are not safe, hence the anti-vaxxer movement. And we won't go into that too big because, you know, they're claiming this is big and alarming. I'm saying this is nothing different. Trump just catered into that when he went after the coronavirus pandemic, right?
Trump's a known conspiracy theorist, though. Like, let's not mince words on that one. Like, he even reported about the whole there's Obama's birth certificate, and miraculously had nothing to say.
He was one of the early and actual propagators of that. Like, the fact that he jumped onto it and rode that is part of the reason why it became such a big deal. Like, Trump, in his weird place in the American
zeitgeist,
culture, it's just a weird place. That was the way that he grew in political strength, is by basically being a birther. So,
yeah. The second policy she claims is if you're looking at disinformation online, which is the blurring of the line between facts and opinion. Online, it's very easy to mix facts, opinion, analysis, falsehood, and is difficult for the reader to disentangle those different types of information, right? And that's because when you take all those things, think about how long it takes you to research. Now, I know the two of you don't spend very much time researching for the show, but I essentially spend a day to 2 days worth of work analyzing, reading, and researching. And I will admit, not every week do I go that in depth. Honestly, like this week, I probably spent 6 to 7 hours reading articles, doing the research, going through reading. I mean, like, it takes a while to do that, especially if we ever get to our other science segment this week, which is about marijuana. There was a lot more research that went into it because I actually didn't agree with what the study said, but I was wrong. And I'll admit I'm wrong here in a little bit. But that's the idea. Is it's very tricky and challenging for people because the lines become blurred because accurate information is getting is allowing for disinformation to get out about different aspects of life, such as ecosystem, protecting free speech, letting people express their opinions and their beliefs. And the problem is that we are better to label false information, but people don't like that. And there's an example from somebody that somehow got COVID but didn't believe it existed really. Anyway, but so the problem is people don't like the fact that there is a trend of people wanting to label things, and they're like, no, you don't get to label our facts. We know what is true to be true, which really sounds like when I have a conversation with Christian. And again, I'm going to sidetrack it for a second here.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. It's like these are arguments that we've had as non-believers, for years. It's just now those arguments of these tiny little bubbles of ignorance
are pushing
they are
into
now
politics.
they're the mainstream arguments for any kind of oppositional argument. Like
exactly. And then the good example of that is when I met with a guy and he essentially, I was like, well, don't come on my Facebook page. And he's like, well, it's okay. I like to listen to dissenting opinions. It's like, all right, well, I'm going to be very open with you that I am pretty anti-Trump and I'm pretty left. I'm just going to say it. And that's fine. Like, what you think is left, like anybody you see in politics, like Bernie's conservative to me, right? Bernie's my conservative choice. So just so you understand where I stand as an individual. And they're like, oh, it's okay. And then they were saying things and we agreed. And then all of a sudden they brought up Ben Shapiro. Yep. And we're not going to go down that path, but it was just kind of funny because it's like, well, here we go back again to this disinformation culture. And because disinformation is a popular thing and Trump thrives on this, this is a thing for him.
This is the chaos that he basically, we've talked about this many times. This is the chaos that he thrives in. Is that if you break all of the social norms and he can just basically take advantage of all your instinctual things, he can manipulate you. I don't understand really how he's managed to do it for so long, because listening to him speak is like listening to a toaster flick on and off all the time. But in the end,
yeah, I'll tell you in a second actually how he does it. But the other thing when I was talking with this individual is we were talking and I said, just so you understand, I'm also probably not the similar religion as you. So again, I don't usually post very anti-Christian things anymore, but it does happen. And that's my viewpoint. And they're like, oh, it's okay because I don't need you to convince me I'm a Christian because of X and this and that. But it goes back to the exact same reason. And I'm not saying he does this, but or they do this, but it's the same thing because people are treating politics like religion now, and they're not looking at the facts. And that's fine. If your religion is because of your personal experiences and personal beliefs, I'm okay with that as long as you don't take that and bleed it over into politics. You can be a Christian, but when you say I only vote Republican because my Christianity tells me that abortion's wrong, even though it doesn't, and God killed a lot of people, even allowed babies to be killed. But, Psalms 123:7. But we talk about these.
137 is when happy is he who's spat.
Yes, okay, I'm sorry. Damn it, you're right. 137. I need to be better at that. but that's the idea is that that's fine. Your belief can be your belief, and you can have a belief in politics. But the problem is when you're willing to dissent from things, you're not actually engaging in the conversation. Because the third and final trend that they talk about here is a decline in trust in institutions. And so, Hannah, when you sat there and said, well, I don't understand, it's right here. It's because of the decline of trust in the institutions, because they're creating a fear factor and a trust of misinformation. And I don't disagree that we should be skeptical sometimes of the government and of these other things, but we have to be very cautious, because when you take this and the second one with disinformation online, and you take the very first one about a disagreement about objective facts, you now have the perfect storm.
Is an interesting side effect to the democratization of information. We used to think that this would be the greatest thing if everybody had access. And then Aaron Swartz, the co-founder of Reddit, no longer noticed and talked about at all really anymore. He was going to prison for hundreds of years because he basically hacked into all of these journals that had been locked away under paywalls and said, no, these are financed and funded by taxpayer information. These should be available for all taxpayers to read. He hacked that information and was going to release it to everyone. He was arrested and was going to be sentenced to however long in prison, and he was found hanging in a cell. So we're not entirely certain, what exactly happened there. I mean, Epstein can happen all the time, but in the end, if you look at the people who want to keep information and keep real information, useful information locked down, they can do that. Unfortunately, our society is not nearly as open and as comfortable as everybody would love to think. But also, the fact that we have democratized information when it comes to the crappy little what is Q? Is Q like a news source? Whatever it is in
QAnon
Indonesia. Yeah, it's a horrible thing that is this tiny minuscule little fart on the internet of a couple of people who are just gaseously nauseating the masses. It by just the nature of viral media and the butterfly effect has managed to grow enough space and enough resiliency to be a major problem. Like that, the fact that that is equal to all of the climate scientists who have hundreds of thousands of years of accumulated data and hundreds and maybe thousands of years of information and experience are considered equal. There's a problem there. And so like we don't have a really good way to navigate this yet. And the only one that I've ever been able to think of is to remove the anonymity from the internet. Insofar that we created essentially a social security number for the internet for any single person. You create kind of like a Bitcoin ledger that no matter what you do, it's all transparent. Anybody who does anything, it's available, and we can see what you did if you do something online. And that wouldn't, you know what I mean? Well, because like if you did that, if you did something like that, where you made the internet completely transparent, what it would do is people would be able to cross-check anything and everything. I mean, it would be an insurmountable amount of data to go through, and only a few people would be able to actually crunch that kind of stuff, which would create a whole new problem. But like for the average person to like, if I could look at Chris Tanner and say, you said something stupid here, and I'm going to look back in your
like history. A couple times tonight. Come on.
Well, what I'm saying is like you see a post and you're like, nah, I don't like that. And you look back and you have a history of doing that because I can look at your ledger. I can look at your history of posting all the way through, and there's no way you can hide it or whatever. Then like, I know that I don't want to hire you for the job of taking control of all of these people who are going to be moving boxes in a warehouse somewhere.
No, that's actually fair. And I have to be very, very careful of that because I get that. Like I actually, when I was looking for a job, had to hide my Facebook page just in case.
I changed some of my Facebook, transparency or change some of the stuff, the non-belief history and all that. Like in the end, like, but like if a society was to function and to try to fight truth decay, then if everybody could see 100% of what we've all said, and maybe we could, you can't just go online and say something and just be completely and totally vacuous and ridiculous. Then everybody might think just a little bit more of what you're saying and what you're posting. You might research a little bit more of what you're about to say and what you're posting, because
they won't though, because it doesn't affect them enough, and because there's a lot of people that don't believe in cancel culture. There's a lot of, and that's a whole discussion for another day.
I'm just saying that like if everybody could look into it, if there was some kind of repercussions to your actions, like make racism punishable again or whatever. Like you hear those arguments. So like people can spout that kind of nonsense, but there isn't like a really big social consequence to those doings. Like if there was a social consequence to posting things that are essentially fake and completely and totally ridiculous, would the meritocracy of the internet, would that actually police itself and create something? I would love to see what the result would be. I don't know if it would be a success or not. I don't know if everybody knowing all that information, like if you knew your uncle was a complete and total blatant racist, would that change anything? I don't know. I would
a
love
lot
to
of
think
people
that it would.
For me, it did, but that's just me. I mean, I don't know.
Love to think that it would, but I don't know if it would.
I don't know. I mean, yeah, I'll tell a story because my grandfather will never listen to this podcast. But so I and I'm gonna call. I'll there you go. I guess this is like the call out episode. So my uncle on my mother's side has supported a politician called Luke Meerman, who's his brother-in-law, who 2 years ago I disparaged quite heavily on the show because he's a piece of shit. He's not just a Republican. He's covered up family issues and all sorts of things that I won't go into on here unless somebody actually truly wants to contact me.
He's not the weirdo in that like brick wall suit and all that crap right in that picture. Just
no, he's not. He's too conservative for that. But anyway, so he's essentially a blonde, blue-eyed Dutch boy that owned a farm because his father died and got selected by the Republican Party to run for a local state office. Anyway, my uncle has helped him in his campaign, which I don't disparage. That's fine, right? That's what he believes in. That's what he wants to do. More power to you. You're not doing that much work, in fairness, because the GOP finances all this shit. So, not to be a dick, but it's a pretty easy cakewalk when you got lots of money behind you. But, long story short is, when Whitmer lost her, lost the Supreme Court, it became a big thing, and essentially he's an anti-masker. He wears the chin diaper. That's what he did. He hated the mask. He vocally said it was oppressing his rights. All these other things. He wanted to reopen Michigan. He wanted to impeach her. All these things.
I bet you he even passed around that whole obituary for Common Sense that cited it was killed by people going, "My rights," and can't see the irony.
That could be true. But he went to a rally for Luke the week before this week, and there was like 500 people there not wearing masks because they believe it's no longer the law. Right. And then end up he's now have to be COVID tested, or that's what he told us he had to. And basically he told my grandfather that he should not have to wear a mask in his presence because it violates his right as a person and nobody should be able to tell him what to do. Now, my grandfather has cancer. He's had cancer for a while, in fairness. He is 86, in fairness. But if he requests you to wear a mask because he's got fucking cancer and doesn't want to get COVID, you should fucking respect that. I don't give a shit who you are, where you're at. I mean, for Christ's sake, you aren't going through cancer or chemo.
But that's also not the government.
Things.
That's not the government saying like you need to wear a mask. That's
just
a
like
family member. That's a family member telling you, listen, bro.
And he asked, and they didn't agree. And then he basically told my grandfather, maybe you should just ask Chris to take you then. Right? So after I offered to take them, and this is before I offered to take him, he then said he could get off work and do it. I got rid of my vacation day, came back, said, okay, fine. I'll whatever. I'll just work that day. I don't need the day off, actually, but I'll just work the day. And then, I get a message from my mother saying, I really need you to take him because we don't have anybody else, because your grandfather, we don't think it's right that your grandfather would have him, and they're in an argument now. And then I take my grandfather, and he tells me about this. I mean, he's telling me all these things, and I'm like, wow, like this is his firstborn son, or I'm sorry, not his firstborn, his lastborn son. I wouldn't have thought I heard these things. And and then like my grandfather and I were talking, and I was like, well, I don't mind wearing the mask. I said, I don't care whether I believe it or not. It has nothing to do with me. It has to do with your comfort level. So if your comfort level is this, I'm okay with that because a little bit of my discomfort is never going to equal to the fact that you're going through a cancer treatment. We're there and you're getting injected with these drugs that I don't even understand what they do, but they somehow are taking your PSA count down. And that's awful, right? And you're having to do this.
It's a level of like just complete and total selfishness. I mean, it is thorough and complete. Like you are such a what is the I'm a brain in a vat? What is the
solipsist?
The full-on solipsist. Like you are the only thing in the world in the existence that matters. Everything else is either a fake manipulation, a sensory whatever. Like literally, you're the only thing, and like that's what that feels like to me. Is like this guy is like, I am all and only. Nothing else matters. Even my own progeny, even my own forebears. Like screw you into oblivion forever. It's just sad.
And it all goes back to this. And this is the whole point of that story is not to say, well, look at me, blah, 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 or let's disparage him, blah, 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 blah. It's to go back to this.
That's fun, though.
Okay, fine. Anybody can spread disinformation to millions of people at the click of a button.
Yes.
This is the discussion of real truth decay, is the fact that you can spread something and we're all guilty of this. I am not exempt from this.
Yep.
I have read some disinformation before.
The worst feeling in the world is when someone corrects you of a thing that you shared and it's wrong.
Like, for example, I have said that Trump's never said he's not a white supremacist or supports them. I've said that. And I had an article that I shared that said that. But that's not true. Technically speaking, Trump has disavowed racist. Trump has disavowed white supremacists. Huh?
He also doesn't drink.
That's fine. But he has officially stated that, which a lot of articles that we have shared have stated that he has not done that. Those are wrong. The difference is that he may say something and do the exact opposite, which again is a topic for another show, not an hour and a half into this show. We're not going down that road. So the idea that with this disinformation of truth, right, is understanding how it can be spread, how it can be circulated, understanding how the social media aspect complicates and makes things even crazier.
Well, bringing back the arguments that like I made a few moments ago, it's just like we as non-believers have been making these arguments for years. Is that it's so much more work to critique, analyze, research, and refute someone's comment of some biblical whatever. Like, I mean, I used to spend hours on a single repost. I would just post a book of all this information. And meanwhile, that same idiot is like repost, click, share. Just, I mean, expounding this stuff everywhere. And so it's like the beginning of the movie Idiocracy, where the two people who are college educated and they've decided we're gonna finish up college and we're gonna decide to have kids. In a little while we're gonna do. And meanwhile, the other people who the other couple they're looking at, it's like, well, I mean, we were like 4 kids in now, and then they look at the college couple and they're like, well, we've decided we both got our degrees, we're gonna have a kid, we're working on it, we're trying, but it's not working so well, we've been trying for a while. And meanwhile, the other couple is like, well, we're on like our 9th kid, and Cletus we just caught him hooking up with the neighbor lady, and they got kids now. Like, just like you look at the propagation of misinformation, and it's really similar to that. And that the smartest people who are inoculated from this ridiculous information, it's so much more work to refute something and to like define the truth in something than it is to just spread nonsense everywhere. And so like the amount of like the speed which the truth can propagate versus which fake news can propagate is so different. And like I don't do the religious debate like giant arguments anymore. I can't. I just literally had to stop doing it for my own personal health and time. And I'm assuming that you both went through that, and the camels and hammers and newborns, like you've dealt with that. You went through that angry atheist phase, and you realize that just like it's too much work unless you get paid as like that is like you become a professional atheist. It's almost impossible to just fight on the internet the whole time over this stuff. And like this kind of thing is the same kind of thing where like it's so easy for people to share in 100 different places when in the same amount of time that you can refute one post on Facebook that disappears immediately. Like it just
from what I've seen of this issue, I mean, there's we all know that various news outlets have the specific bend, a bias, and all of that. Like, we know CNN tends to lean to the left. We know Fox leans hard to the right. Everybody kind of sees that various news outlets have a specific bend. So hearing that people don't have or are losing trust in the news sources does kind of add up, especially since we live in the marketplace of ideas. And
I think it's a marketplace.
Well, that's how it's right. The free market of ideas, where, again, boiling back to my accusations that capitalism isn't about what's right, it's about what sells the best. And
burn
in our modern news cycle, I mean, we've got a 24-hour news cycle, but the problem is though is that when a breaking story comes, that's all it focuses on for the 24 hours. Well, guess what? They can only say the same thing so many times. So they go off of speculation and this, that, and the other. And then, I mean, yeah, I get it that as new information arises, we have to change our narrative. Like we as skeptics are we're no strangers to updating and modifying our opinions, right? Like that's
reporting something before it's been confirmed, so that you can be the first people to break the story.
Exactly, and trying to be and rushing to be the first, and not caring so much about getting the right story, but getting a story per se has hurt our view of the news. Now, is that necessarily the news's fault? I want to be charitable and say not necessarily. But I do think that they haven't shed any blame either. Like they still have their fair share of blame. I just don't think that they're the only ones to blame. But now, like we as a society are a victim of our own success. Like all of our privileges are staring at us in the face, and we don't even realize it. Like the onset of the internet, nobody ever really saw what it was going to become. Like I don't think anybody really thought the internet was going to become, what is it, over 70% porn? We never saw that coming.
I remember seeing it. It was a few years ago now that it was the first time that searches, social media and activity on social media had overtaken porn. It's like actually, the porn is now number 2 or 3 or whatever.
Oh.
But
so okay.
Social media had actually overtaken it. Like
okay,
it was like a big deal.
Oh, interesting. But to go back to it, it's now we have so much news, and everybody has to put their own spin. We have to create something unique. So instead of just saying this is the truth, it's well, this is my interpretation of events. This is how it's most convenient for my fan base, and this is what's going to get me the most clicks and clickbait titles. And I mean, it's probably part of the reason why there's such a contributing factor, I should say, to why there's a mistrust of science is the fact that science reporting is half the time it's garbage. I mean, you'll see, scientists claim they can cure this. Scientists claim that eating meat causes cancer, blah, blah, blah. But the problem is that the science didn't actually say that. Is that the science just said, relative versus absolute risk was different. And there's, as we advance more as a species, we've kind of forgotten that even though our technology is advancing, we need to advance with it. We need to grow with it and what it means, instead of just assuming that it's going to make us better at what we are now, when no, it's not. But that's, I guess, taking us a little bit further away from the fact that
y'all keep running away from the topic.
It's a gift. It's a gift. What can I say?
It's like we go. Let's go down this path, and the Canadians like, no, over here, look over here, look over here.
Well, yeah, I mean, have you seen my country? It's beautiful. My country is beautiful.
Anyway, so there's a lot to this. I'll be honest.
Yeah.
There's probably more than we have the time to cover in the next 6 minutes.
But
of the
everybody has felt it, though. You know what I mean? Like everybody's kind of felt some of this misinformation stuff. So we all have a recognition.
It's all about the gotchas and the quick, easy jab points to try to win, instead of actually taking the time to, as Hanna was saying there, writing almost a novel and doing all the research to disprove a point and breaking down why this is true, that's true, but this isn't true. What you've said is a misrepresentation, and we need to work on fostering an environment where we're no longer worried about the truth decay, but we're actually comforted by it. And uncomfortable truths are uncomfortable, but not so uncomfortable that we can't handle it. And oh god, I made the mistake of seeing QAnon, and I wanted to go on a rant on that one.
We're not going to do that.
I'm adjusting my ADD meds, so I'm a little off. But yeah, it's the news has become very untrustworthy, and it's sad because
has it truly?
The perception it has. Anyways,
you're buying into this. The same thing is you're saying it is becoming untrustworthy, where in reality that's not the aspect, right? It's not that news is becoming untrustworthy. It's the fact that we're allowing and accepting these news bites to become untrustworthy. We're buying into that and allowing for that to happen. Whereas understanding or demonstrating the levels of understanding how truth decay actually happens in today's society, because there's new ways to bring fact-based reporting to people. There is. And there's like online videos that we could talk about. So it's not that the news is doing it. It's that it's the same thing with the WNBA. We're allowing people to support the NBA that when we should be looking and supporting more well-rounded sources. And I'm not advocating for a nationalist TV syndicate at all.
Mm-hmm.
This can be done without that.
Yeah.
The problem is we're not bringing these things back.
We're getting our information from these social media. So like the number of people getting their news from Facebook, which essentially is a filter, and then the people that they're in friendship with is also another filter. So there's two filters at least that are filtering what information you get as far as the news, whatever. So the sources that you're getting these from, whatever sources are more shareable, more viral, more clickable, those are the ones that are getting the most clicks. It's not the sources themselves that are making problems and not being as trustworthy. So like, I do agree with Chris's point that there's a potentiality that some of these sites are still legitimate and some of them are really trying to find the right balance between marketability, advertising, and honesty and truth. And the issue when it comes to like, you just need to survive on the internet in the free market of ideas. And so I do think that if there was a situation where you could take out like all of the shares and the likes and the social media aspect, and you could look back to like the periodical nature of a lot of these news stories where they're kind of a hybrid now, intellectual and digital, and the periodical news stories that we used to see of the dailies and the weeklies. If you could find a blend where there was a way that you paid money, so to speak, to see something, like the Washington Post is constantly saying, hey, you've seen enough of your allocated number of monthly views. If you want something, you need to pay a little bit for it. Or the New York Times doing the exact same thing. If we expect everything on the internet to be free and everything to be something that we just get, you just search and you get exactly what you want, and there's no investment from you, then is that an issue? And so like, I personally, like, I have an issue with, subscriptions and microtransactions everywhere, but we used to spend money to get the news, and by spending that money, we were subsidizing and funding quality research. And now the only way that you can fund and subsidize that research is through advertising. And so the only way that these sites can get money in advertising is by having the most clickbaity titles. And so they're naturally going to funnel themselves towards these stories that are going to be viral and ridiculous. The internet structure itself and the things that we use for information are problematic. And so like, the advertising model that we have on the internet right now could be part of the problem that we have for why there is truth decay, because it naturally wants to drive people away from the truth into a capitalistic corporatist idea of getting the most people to my website so that I can make the most money, and then I can invest money into the research. But like, the research and the truth is the secondary. Getting people to click your crappy page and like your stupid thing and share your ridiculous thing that nobody ever needs to hear ever, that is more important than the integrity of whatever you're sharing. And until we change that, none of this stuff is going to change. Like, the truth isn't the thing that drives all of these shares. In most cases, it's how manipulable and how viral is the post. Because one of the things that you always see is that, like, oh, this point that was in the article, did you agree with that? And they're like, oh, I didn't read the article, I just shared it because I like the title. Like, there's so many problems that we have with this that are part of this truth decay. And as far as, again, uninvolved populace and everything, it's really difficult to find the answer. I mean, I don't know it, but I would love to see more transparency across the board, and maybe we could just root out some of the garbage and then sort through the truth, as ugly as it can be, or maybe.
Yeah, and I think that's part of. I think this is going to be an ongoing conversation on the show, and I encourage both of you to read the book personally, because I think that I've given you homework before, but I think this is a pretty important homework. Not saying I've read the whole book or anything, but I think
Which book again?
The Truth, Decay Dilemma or something like that. I'll send you the link afterwards. It's in the description.
I saw a couple of books with that title, and I wasn't sure if that was the same one.
It is. And so what we can do is, I think we should read it. We should go through it. I think this is going to be a more prevalent conversation. Again, there's a lot of information to go through, but what I really want to get to now is our quick saves, because if we spend too much time, I'm just going to become even more and more depressed where I'm already at. Like having to try to explain to somebody why women should make the same as men, and then basically being told, well, capitalism says they shouldn't, therefore they shouldn't, is a really hard thing to do.
If you want depression,
Dallas stuff,
hit play. Just hit play. Just hit play right here for Al Bundy.
I hear you're putting on some kind of concert. That's good. People need to be entertained. They need the distraction. I wish to God that somebody would do something to block out the voices in my head for 5 minutes. The voices that scream over and over. Why do they come to me to die? Why do they come to me to die?
Okay. It's my quick save. I saw someone share this because if you see the title there, I used to relate to Wayne and Garth, but now I find myself relating more and more to this guy. As I get older, as I see the grays sprouting with my kids and my daughters, we were driving today in the van, and they were basically my oldest has red hair, orange, and the youngest has kind of a brownish color similar to my hair. My wife has black hair, but we're just letting the gray just do its thing, and my gray is just spouting in the corners, whatever. But no dyeing happens anymore. And so my oldest was like, "Mommy has what?" Like she was describing. So Eloise has brown hair, Daddy has dark hair, Mommy has and I thought it was absolutely hilarious. It's like, oh, how are you going to describe this? And I find myself relating to these concepts of like aging and older people, and like not being like, oh, my hair's just this color. Now it's like, oh, not really certain. Like, what do you call salt and pepper? So like the understanding of like, it's not just like going out to party at a show. Like, hey, I heard you guys are having a cool show, and it's at the barn, right? Where we always go, and there's a stage set up, and it's like an underground metal show, and we're going to go riff out. Now it's just like, there's a guy in a button-up shirt, possibly with a tie, who's like, I hear you guys doing something, and it's now what I'm going to be doing. Like, that's what it feels like to see things happening. Maybe not so much in the COVID culture, but like I feel myself being more and more removed as time goes on from like interesting and impromptu happenings that of like just like this like an underground show or a metal show or stuff that I used to just be like, okay, let's go check out that thing, that new band, that or whatever. And so like I see it, and like I just felt like a pang of pain when this guy was like, yeah, I agree with this guy, or like I associate more with this guy. Not so much like the crazy voices in my head, because I don't work in retail. I've been told that that's a pretty gnarly place to be, but in the end, like I find myself associating and relating with the guys in movies that I was just like, this old guy, he's so full of garbage. Like I think of those characters a little bit less as ridiculous and a little bit more realistic now, and it's weird to be in that place.
Exactly. So, the next one we have is from Buddy.
Good, holy,
At least 25 feet wide and several feet deep. The images are startling and the fear for passing drivers very
Detroit.
real.
We were just driving down Shane, and the next thing you know, we just missed this giant sinkhole. It's amazing that we didn't fall in.
Pastor Barry Randolph and his niece narrowly missing the huge hole as they drove down Shane near Medbury. At the time, the sinkhole wasn't marked, alerting them and other drivers.
So
you gotta skip a little bit forward. Oh, here we go.
Okay.
Crinkled and cracked, opening up a putrid passageway in the middle of Chain Street to Beelzebub's bungalow many, many miles down. I don't know. As I stared into the darkened void, imagining the hordes of devils soon to spring forth, I couldn't help but ponder. How deep does that hole go?
All right.
Neighbors.
So hold on. Your whole point is this, right? Is this guy, right?
So it's that guy's channel. Yeah.
Hold on, though. I got to
What?
show you something.
The heck?
Can I show you something?
Yes.
This is
yes,
gonna
you're
blow
in
your mind.
charge.
Is it the Weird Arby's guy?
Yup. Yup, it
Yeah,
is.
it's the same guy.
It's the same guy. So get this.
Moment of knowing candor, I looked toward Jarrell and Tino and uttered a stirring call to action. Dem Arby's boys. Wheels up. That will no doubt take every ounce of me, and perhaps take more ounces than D&T even have in their pints. I don't know. But with one last look of a warrior's accord, we vaulted higher than Meatloaf's motorcycle, bursting through the devilish graveyard stony sod. And just like the loaf, we soared. And just like the loaf, we sang. Like a bat out of hell, I'll be gone when the morning comes.
Oh, God.
When the night is over, like a bat out of hell, I'll be gone, gone, gone.
So is this guy taking newscasts
No.
and editing himself in?
No.
Sort of.
Is it really? So that's not a real thing. This is not a
has to
Channel
be.
4 thing.
I'm not
Well, I mean,
100% sure. I think he might borrow some pieces from actual.
That's what I'm thinking. Like
news
he's editing himself in to like because I mean.
And for all the criminals and holduppers out there fixing to mess with Claudette and Dem Arby's boys, let this be a lesson to you all, ha ha ha. For we are more bonded than the gorilla glue betwixt the hull and wings of a Focke-Wulf trifugal model 1/48 scale. We are more dedicated to the servitude and defense of our meaty HQ than Chitara and Lion-O defending Thundercat's lair. And I am Snarf ready, ho! For when the aggressors arise and try to inflict evil against the kingdom of beef and champ, so too will a band of mighty heroes arise. Heroes hell-bent on protecting the curly fries and jalapeno bites of honor. Paladins of pork, dead set on defending the buttermilk chicken and buffalo sliders of this cheesy citadel. For we, DAB, will fight against the mumras and muggers.
All right,
of the
fine. All right, sorry, Keith.
Like,
I did not mean
no
to
way.
overtake your quick save, but
I
you gave me that link and I posted it, and then I got this next up video, and that was the one. And then I didn't watch your video. I'll be honest with you. I did not watch your video at all. I just saw that and I was like, "Ooh, I'm gonna switch my quick save for this week." Because this is so much better. And then when all of a sudden yours played it, I was like, no shit. What the fuck is this? What is this? Oh my God. And so you have to be right. They have to be editing this. I mean, nobody goes on a newscast and is that prepared after they chase the robber. Nobody.
And then the camera stays on. Like when
a
crazy person is in front of a camera, they edit that crap out.
Yeah.
They really do.
I picked this for my quick save because I've watched this guy's clips a few times. Like he's got a couple of these videos, and it's fun. It makes me laugh, and I think these days more than ever, until the uncertainty of November 3rd, 2020 has come and gone, we need what we every little thing that we can to try just enjoying life. Because either things are going to not suck as much, or we're basically going to be living in a dystopian hell, it feels like.
Give it a few days. Yeah. Don't make it just November 3rd. Give it a few more days, because I can almost certainly guarantee that there won't be an answer on that day.
But I will be taking the next day off no matter what. It's already on my calendar. I've already put in for it.
And the fact that other countries know when our terrible election happens, is another.
It's weird. Why is yours the only one that everybody knows internationally? It's weird. But anyway, so as we wrapped up last week, there was a line from the one that I shared that was kind of in my head, and I was sitting in just kind of eating food afterwards, just kind of decompressing everything, and line popped into my head. I'm like, I gotta rewatch that video, and I watched it again, and I giggled my ass off, and I just thought I would share that because it seemed that a good laugh would be really good for all of us right now.
I saw it. I got to the point where you started doing the crazy stuff, and I turned it off because I was like, "This is fake."
That's the point.
It was really good though.
I don't know. Yeah, like I said, I'll be honest, I didn't actually watch it. It just was like that was your thing, and then all of a sudden, I was like, all right, well, whatever. I mean, maybe it's true, maybe it's not. We'll see. But then I just then after the recommendation, I just couldn't help myself. So for me this week, it comes from a band I actually loathe. I hate this band. I think they are one of the worst bands in the world in terms of music wise. I know a lot of people like them.
They've been on my celebrity death watch. So apparently Ivan, the lead singer, is like this complete alky just mess. And like I've been waiting for like the lead singer just like drink himself to death, but it hasn't happened yet. So,
So essentially, they came out with a new video portraying mask wearers as communists.
Oh, God,
right?
Really?
Now, again, yeah, I can't believe none of you have seen this. No, and I get
they're in the like the military thing, like so like the Bad Company stuff, like just made them like military wet dream when they just for that. So, but this is the new one, huh?
Yeah, and like I don't care for their music. I never have. I never thought they were really like good metal. I think they were just like cheap, crappy metal. But essentially, like they're explaining why America's beautiful idea that draws immigrants, and yes, he's technically an immigrant, right?
Yeah, he is.
And he's explaining why it's now under siege. He says it's not a left against right problem, but an evolutionary problem, which makes no sense, right? The growing pains of civilization that are without the necessary spiritual enlightenment, which is bullshit, arrived at a bit earlier of a level of technology than everyone needed, right? We're not connected. The good news is that now everyone has a voice. The bad news is that everybody has a voice, which is true because they don't deserve a voice. They need to shut the fuck up and go back to their prehistoric garbage rock crap that they like to pull,
That's unfortunate.
And again, I do not like their music personally, but
so why is this your quick save? Because you want to say screw these guys?
Yeah, because like to me, their music is awful, and like it's like, hey, look, I didn't know that this was gonna come up, right? Honestly, I had no idea that this was a thing, and here it is. Like, here's a music video where they're sitting there talking about why they're anti-coronavirus. And like, to me, what it shows is that we have these extremely rich people, really rich people, creating music and entertainment, giving themselves a voice. And it goes back to the discussion about our truth dissension, right? Our truth decay, all of that. It all comes back down to that because these people are able to now create a platform to demonstrate why they don't believe in something that they don't truly understand. That's what it is. Oh, I thought they were metal.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
He's metal. Hold on, wait. Maybe this is metal.
Been a talker.
Oh my God! Look at that guy. I mean, I'm glad you're wearing. Oh, look at you. Oh, not metal still. Oh, still not metal. God, when is it gonna get heavy? Oh, still not heavy. Hold on, maybe let's go to the end. Oh, he's by a liquor store. Man, it sounds like Stained. Like they're kind of ripping off Stained.
Yeah. Everything's it's outside the inside, man.
I don't know. Like
FFDP, yeah, there's definitely some DP happening in there.
Yeah, I don't know. Does anybody want to hear some real metal? Maybe some real metal.
Yes, Des makes me happy. He always makes me happy.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh! Like.
Yeah.
All right, there you go. I fixed my issue.
I genuinely love lyric videos, and
I don't.
That's it. I like it because I can't hear what anyone's saying.
All right, fair enough.
So I can read it.
I'll admit that's fair.
And it makes me happy. It does.
That's all that matters.
And that's
know what I
fine,
mean?
Hanna.
For F's sake, to be all
put the F's in the chat, baby. Put the F's in the chat.
Because like you guys been spitting out your stuff. But either way, yeah, it's been gross just in general lately. And the quick saves, Keith's was nice. Tanner's was gross. Mine was gross. But yeah. And Brianna's Taylor's killers are still loose. That's a good way to end the show, I think.
I think it's an important way to end it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It is.
As we move through this and your beer is gone, it's sad to be you. You know, I don't know. So like my good red Potley, you kind of look like the devil there. Anyway, so as we move through this and we talk about real metal, maybe next episode should be dedicated to what is true metal and nothing else. Like maybe that's what it should be. It would be a complete cathartic episode for me. I would enjoy it. We'd probably get banned on YouTube. Nobody else probably cares.
You would probably yell at me for being too.
I don't know. We agree on a lot of metal for the most part. We do. Only a little bit that we don't agree on.
I am so cogent, though. That's one of my problems with it. Like the Fear Factory cogency. We can talk about it. Let's do it. I don't know. Let's do a music episode. What does everybody think? We did like Fear Factory reviews back in the day.
We did, yeah.
Yeah, it was like
and they don't exist anymore. So there's a whole thing about that band. We can talk about that. That's sad, but I get it. And good. There's like, you want to talk about conspiracy theory? Let's talk about that conspiracy theory. There you go.
Weird.
I don't know. It's been too long on this episode.
I don't know.
We spent too much time dicking off.
Shut it down. Shut it down.
I'm shutting it down.
Turn off.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We'll be back next week with another episode. I will not claim it'll be a music episode. I do think there's a lot of important topics we have to cover before the election. I will tell you that what we will probably do for the election, and I'm going to kind of try and hold the two of you to this, is we're going to have a regular episode, and then we're going to do a live stream episode on the night of the election, and we're going to look at some of the things. I think we did that 4 years ago. I can't remember, but we're going to try and do that. So anyway, look for more political shit from us, and then probably some very easy stuff till the end of the year. Either which way, thank you all so much for joining us. Have an amazing night. Subscribe, like us on YouTube, like us on Facebook, or if you want to become a patron, become a patron. Thank you all, and have an amazing night.